This is Rock and Roll English. Real people, real English.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Rock and Roll English. I'm sorry to tell you, but I have some bad news. Dan the man is back. Obviously last episode I had an interesting guest, but I couldn't find anyone interesting. So I had to speak to Dan the man again. But he is a good person to speak to for this episode because we are speaking about St. Patrick, because tomorrow's St. Patrick's Day. And Dan is actually Irish. Well, sort of. So let's see what he knows about St. Patrick. Happy listening. Dan the man, welcome back on the show. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Very well. Although in the last episode I spoke to an interesting person, so unfortunately I am here again with you. So I could be better, but you know, it's not so bad.
Thank you for having me.
A pleasure as always. Well, I say a pleasure until I find someone more interesting. It's always a pleasure.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Okay, so you may know that tomorrow is St. Patrick's Day because you have some Irish blood, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
As do you, yes.
As do I, yes. My grandfather was Irish, but you are 50% Irish, if I'm not wrong, no?
Well, my mum's family are entirely Irish, yeah.
So 50%. Okay, so do you know anything about the history of St. Patrick's Day, Dan?
I don't know anything about the history, no. So I'm going to be learning here as well.
You're going to be learning here, sure you are. I didn't know anything either until about an hour ago when I read some articles on the internet. But one thing to make us feel better is it seems no one really knows anything because no one's really sure about the truth. There are various myths. What is a myth, Dan?
A story that we don't know is true.
Exactly. You are on fire today, Dan. That's the first time I've asked you for an explanation and you gave me the correct answer.
Well, it's a Sunday. I'm normally right on Sundays.
The Sunday because we're recording on a Sunday, by the way.
Yeah.
Fucking hell, Dan.
Well, just cut that out.
Okay, so the day celebrates the arrival of Christianity in Ireland because that is what St. Patrick brought to the country. Apparently.
I thought he chased out snakes.
Oh, that is one of the good points that I'm going to mention. So when he says he chased out snakes, he means he got rid of snakes. And what does it mean to get rid of snakes, Dan?
To remove.
To remove, exactly. That's 2 out of 2, Dan. Wow.
I know.
That people say that, but that would not have been very difficult because snakes have never existed in Ireland. Scientists say with the cold temperature in Ireland, it's impossible that snakes could have lived there with their cold blood. So
scientists once said the Earth was flat, so let's
true, Dan.
Be careful.
Also true, but I think science is a bit different now. But anyway, I'd like to congratulate St. Patrick for getting rid of the snakes there because that must have been really difficult. But they say that this is sort of like a story that come from the fact he got rid of the high members of the Celtic tradition and replaced it with the Christian church. So maybe these high members of society were known as snakes.
Potentially.
Well, definitely, in my opinion. And obviously the shamrock is associated with the day. So the shamrock, let's say, is the plant with 3 leaves. Do you know why that's associated with the day, Dan?
Of course not, no.
Well, apparently St. Patrick used it to describe the Holy Trinity, which is the Father, Son and the Holy Spirit.
I thought that was a load of rubbish they just taught us in Catholic school.
A load of rubbish, what? That the Father and Son, Holy Spirit don't exist?
Yeah. No. I just thought that connection to the shamrock.
Well, apparently not. Although it sounds a bit stupid to me if you say, look, there's this thing called the Father, the Son and the Holy Spirit. And people say, what? Well, I don't understand. How does that work? And he says, well,
give me that shamrock leaf.
give me that shamrock. Well, this is the Father, this is the Son, and this is the Holy Spirit. Ah, okay. Now it makes sense. Thanks.
I'm a believer.
Well, but apparently that's what he did. But my question, which I have not been able to find an answer to, present perfect there, Dan, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
I knew that one.
Of course you did. Is why is it so popular in the world? Because, well, for example, St. George's Day, which is the patron saint of England, is not celebrated at all. But St. Patrick's Day, in fact, I read, is the most celebrated national festival in the world.
I think because on St. Patrick's Day, Guinness give away those hats, don't they? So
that's actually something we will mention later in the show. But my theory is because it's also big in America, and anything that's big in America, unfortunately, seems to become popular.
I've got a fact for you on that, actually.
Okay.
Do you know there's more people who consider themselves Irish in America than in Ireland?
I did know that because I read that about an hour ago, and I also considered it one of the facts not interesting enough to make it into the podcast. So thanks for mentioning that, Dan.
You're welcome.
But yeah, as I was saying, St. George in England is it's not even a national holiday, and he killed a dragon. So that seems a lot bigger than showing a shamrock to a couple of people. But obviously in Ireland, St. Patrick's Day is a national holiday and nobody works. But did you know, until 1971, which is not that long ago, all pubs were closed?
What do you mean?
Well, what's difficult to understand? The pubs were not open. People couldn't drink beer or Guinness.
So what did people do?
I don't know. But apparently all the pubs were closed because the government were worried that people would drink too much. Well, it seems they were right about that because
drink driving isn't like really, really high, isn't it? On
Oh, really? Drink driving? Obviously, when you drive when you're drunk.
No, I actually did read the other day that apparently 48% of deaths on St. Patrick's Night on the road are due to drink driving.
48% of deaths. Yeah. Wow. Well, that is an interesting fact. So you're not a complete waste of time, Dan.
It's not verified, so be careful.
Okay. This is just something Dan has invented now.
Well, no, I saw it online, so just be careful.
Okay. So what we were talking about earlier about the amount which is drunk. So $245 million is spent on alcohol on St. Patrick's Day. And so on a normal day, 5.5 million Guinnesses are sold, and that moves up to 13 million on.
Wow. I like Guinness.
I don't like it. I don't like it at all. But I think that is probably connected to what you mentioned earlier, Dan. Which in England, what is it? If you drink 10 pints of Guinness,
6.
They give you a hat.
I think it's 6.
6.
But they always run out of hats, which is annoying.
They would run out. Very good. So they finish the hats that they have. I mean, that is just so ridiculous that people drink 6 pints of Guinness to get a ridiculous hat.
I've seen you once on St. Patrick's Night when we were 18 walking past in a hat.
That is an absolute lie. I don't drink Guinness, so I have never drunk.
You had a hat. You had a hat. So maybe you stole it from someone.
That's even worse, isn't it? It's one thing drinking the Guinnesses and wearing the hat. It's even worse if you steal it. But no, that's absolutely not true. One other fact is that Ireland actually have 3 patron saints. They have St. Bridget and St. Columba, but nobody even knows who they are.
Well, they haven't chased snakes out of a country, that's why.
They shouldn't. Well, yeah, but if I were one of those, I would be pretty gutted.
You could never be a patron saint of any country.
Well, that's why I'm using the second conditional, Dan. It's hypothetical. If I were, I would be gutted. And what does it mean, gutted?
Extremely disappointed.
Extremely disappointed. Very informal way, but very common to say. But yeah, they must be thinking, this bloody St. Patrick is a right bastard. He's taking all of this attention.
All the limelight.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, limelight. Nice word there, Dan, which is basically used to show attention. So I've got a couple of other myths here to talk about, which are not true. St. Patrick's main colour was blue, apparently. In all pictures of him, he's wearing blue. So the green thing is a load of rubbish.
You're colourblind, though, aren't you? So
I am colourblind. Very nice word. Thanks for sharing that as well, Dan. Which means I cannot distinguish colours.
And it explains why he wears some of the clothes he does.
Very nice. I generally don't tell people that because when I do, I spend the next 10 minutes answering questions like, so what colour's this? So what colour's this? So what colour's this? So what colour's this? So I try to keep that as much as a secret as possible. But thanks for sharing that, Dan.
You're welcome.
And something else which I think is actually disgusting, which I would like to share. Apparently, so LGBT people, which is like, what is it, lesbian, gays, bisexuals and transsexuals, were banned from like attending the sort of ceremony of St. Patrick's until 2015.
What?
Well, no, in New York until 2014. And in Boston until 2015. So only 2 years ago.
But banned from... I don't understand. Where were they banned from?
Like attending the ceremony in the streets. I don't know how they managed to say...
Is that legal?
Well, I don't know how they managed to find out if you were gay just from attending like this ceremony. But yeah. So for everyone that's listening, you know, if you go to England tomorrow and you drink 6 pints of Guinness, you will... get a hat.
Mm-hmm. A very good hat, actually.
A very good hat. I also found a picture of Barack Obama drinking a pint of Guinness in an Irish pub on St. Patrick's Day, which, again, just shows... I don't know why it's so popular.
What, Guinness or St. Patrick's?
Both. I don't like either. One other thing I'd like to mention is that, obviously, there was pretty much an Irish pub in every city in the world. But I live in the only city where there's not. So, you know, I hope you all enjoy getting drunk because in Palermo,
that's a business opportunity for you, surely.
Oh, good thinking. Good thinking. Thanks for the advice, Dan. And thanks, as always, for your time.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll see you soon.
See you later.
Okay, so notice how the show finished there with Dan saying, see you later. He's definitely not going to see me later, because we don't live in the same country. We actually record these conversations on Skype, if you're interested. But it's a very normal thing to say. It's another way to say goodbye, even if you're not going to see that person. But that is only in England, let me tell you. If you go to America, they don't say that. But if you want to sound like an English person, and remember, we invented the language, see you later is absolutely perfect. Okay, so let's look at some of that rock and roll vocabulary. So we started with myth, which, as Dan correctly said for the first time ever, means a story which is invented and which we don't know is true. In this situation, obviously, that story or stories were about St. Patrick. Get rid of something was another one, and remember, that was when we were talking about St. Patrick getting rid of the snakes, removing them, which we discovered was actually a myth because it's not true. A shamrock, which is like the plant associated with this day, with the 3 leaves, because if you remember, the leaves represent the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, which I personally think is a bit stupid, but, you know, never mind. Drink driving is another one. I'm sure I don't need to explain the meaning, but the collocation is important because many people say things like driving while drinking, which is just not common. We say drink driving. The police arrested him for drink driving. To run out of something, which means to finish something. And when we were talking about the pubs in England that give you a hat if you drink 6 pints of Guinness, and then so many people do it, they actually run out of hats. They finish the hats. which just shows you the high level of culture us English people have. Gutted was a really nice piece of vocabulary, which means really disappointed. Remember, we were talking about the patron saints, the other ones, and I said, if I were one of those, I would be gutted, very disappointed. It's an informal way to speak, but it's not a swear word and is very, very normal. The limelight was another one, which means to take all of the attention. It followed nicely after gutted, actually, when I said I would be gutted because St. Patrick is taking all of the limelight, all of the attention. We normally use it, obviously, for famous people. If there is a scandal or something, we normally say, I don't know, this person is in the limelight at the moment because all of the attention is on him or her. Colorblind was the last one, which is obviously when you cannot distinguish the colours, and is a problem I suffer from. Although it's only really like red and brown and blue and purple. So if you see me, please do not ask me to distinguish colours for you. I have been doing it for 32 years. Well, not the first few years I was alive, but I've certainly been doing it for 27 years. So, it's not that fun. Anyway, I won't keep you any longer. I hope you learned something about St. Patrick and some new words. Remember, you can always go to the website rockandrollenglish.com to do a quiz with all of this vocabulary. There is some rock and roll grammar, and it's generally a fantastic website. And if you can find 2 minutes to leave me a review on iTunes or Podbean, that would be super. Thanks as always for listening. Have a great weekend, and I will see you later.
Thanks so much for listening to Rock and Roll English. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit rockandrollenglish.com and facebook.com/rockandrollenglish. We'll catch you next time.